candidates in this year's municipal elections. First, I want to go over the format of the forum. Candidates will be asked unique questions that have been prepared in advance by the partners and collaborators. Questions have been numbered and picked at random. All the questions fall into the following categories: environmental impacts and justice, housing and zoning and new construction, public safety, transportation. We also added some leadership questions for the mayoral candidates. The partners and moderators are the only people who have seen the questions before tonight.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, candidates, you will have 2 minutes to respond, and then the microphone will be turned off. The same time residents have to speak at public hearings to explain complicated topics. If your answer includes adding or expanding a program or any other action that would cost money, please include how the city should pay for that change, such as raise taxes, take it from another program, or other means. Audience, please refrain from clapping or making noise. We have a lot of candidates and we want to have 4 rounds of questions for all candidates and then 1 round for mayoral candidates. Any reaction must be nonverbal, not consume time, otherwise it takes time away from candidate questions. We recommend that if you feel it necessary to respond, please only click your fingers or give a thumbs up or down in response. To be fair to all candidates, each candidate will be asked the same number of questions as all the others. Finally, this is being live streamed and recorded with Spanish translations being provided through Zoom. Please speak at a slightly slower pace so that interpreters can keep up. Ideal Ortiz will give you a slow down motion if the translators are having trouble. Please slow your pace. Your timer is being held by Cynthia and should be visible to you. Can you all see the timer?
Yes.
When the alarm sounds, stop talking. Do the candidates have any questions? All right.
Okay, we will start at the far end of the table, and the microphone will be passed to the next candidate table. Then we will go in the reverse direction to the next round. Now let's start. In 1 minute, please tell us your name and why you are running for council.
My name is Diana Meadow. I am running because I've lived in Durham for almost 15 years. It's where I've chosen to raise my 3 kids. It's where I plan to grow old. And I believe that Durham deserves more. I think that people want to move here, so we need to build more homes so that we can have space for them, and we need to build for affordability so that people here can afford their homes. How do we do this? We'll talk more about that. I also want more for our parks and our recreation, and we need to have more workforce development and workforce economic mobility. People should be able to move up in their jobs, and then they can afford nicer homes too. We'll talk more.
Good evening. My name is Terry McCann. I'm running for Ward 3. I'm a high school teacher here in Durham. I've been teaching since 2006 at the early college here, but I've been teaching almost 30 years. And I believe in the power of education. I've been a resident of Durham since 1996. My wife bought our first home. I'm running for Durham City Council because again, it's out here. You see that Durham needs to be changed. But the same kind of mentality that's been in Durham for years and years and years since I've been in Durham has been what has moved Durham and City Council. I believe in common sense solutions to make Durham a better place. It doesn't take something that's very, very hard to make something very, very easy to take place in Durham. I believe in public safety, because without public safety, housing is not going to take place. You're not going to be safe. Without good effective public safety, having good parks is going to be irrelevant. So I believe in strong police protection and for police to do their job and do it the right way. And it can be done. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Durant Long, and I'm running for Ward 3 City Council because I've lived in Durham my entire life, and I've noticed that there has always been a fundamental disconnect between the people of Durham and the policy that is put in place. And this is caused, I believe, by a systemic disinvestment and a history of unequal representation. I believe a rising tide lifts all ships, and I want to reinvest in actual Durhamites, not developers, not corporations, but people. I want to do trickle up economics. I want to invest in the person, in their livelihood, in their education, and their growth, and all they bring to Durham. Thank you very much.
Good evening, my name is Chelsea Cook. I am your current Ward 3 representative on the City Council, and I'm running to the seat. A year and a half ago, I put my name in the hat for an appointment position, so you haven't seen me on the ballot before. I did so at that time because I had experience in the past 6 years. I have served as an eviction defense lawyer in this community. And so I have seen the struggle of affordable housing and seen the pain that folks are going through up front. And I have a lot of policy ideas and a lot of community relationships that I hope to leverage and make changes in those areas. I'm proud to say that I was unanimously supported by my colleagues. And I'm talking quickly, but I am a litigator. I was unanimously supported by my colleagues, and I have a passion for this city. If you've seen any of the council meetings, you've seen that I ask a lot of questions. And that is because I really believe that transparency and well-educated decisions are the way to go in local politics. So I look forward to speaking with you more tonight.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. My name is Minister Rob Fink Lady. I'm a student of the Honorable Minister Lewis Fargo. Why am I running? I'm from that part of the disadvantaged community that never had a voice at this table. Everyone has been speaking for us, but none of us stepped up to take on this challenge to represent self in the community. I'm running because I got sick and tired of seeing my babies being slaughtered in the streets of Durham. 2-year-old Mayoral squirrels gunned down on June the 20th. June the 20th of last year. The killer still roaming in our community. I'm running because I got tired of seeing people like myself sleep in the bushes on the side of the streets in Durham.
Thank you all so much. I'm Mayor Mayoral Collaborative. I'm running because I have background in education. I used to educate a lot of the people that are being employed in the city right now. And my story from Eastern North Carolina, poverty background, all the way to being able to just, create a dream come true and start a business and get to help create jobs in our community. And politics is a little different when you are in office and you have to make payroll at the same time. And you think about how do you practically build out a community. And I just think there's some value in just keeping honest with everyone. Before I ran for office, I sounded like a lot of frustration. Now that I'm in office, I'm trying to solve that frustration. And that means being honest and truthful with folks. That's what I want to bring to you. So I look forward to getting a little more technical a little later. But just really talking about what's possible in our community. Thank you.
Good evening, Bold City. My name is Pablo Friedman. I'm a former high school math teacher. I'm a current district administrator, lifelong educator, and I am one of your candidates, and hopefully with your support, become the next mayor here in the city of Durham. I'm running because many people throughout the last couple of months felt they wanted another option on the table when it came to this election, particularly in the race for mayor. A real viable option with substantive issues on the table with regards to development, how we approach that, issues around taxation, making sure those that have the most, such as billion-dollar corporations that are exempt from paying property taxes, pay their fair share. And also on housing, making sure we're doing the best that we can at the city level to address those issues. And so I'm really excited to be here tonight with this upcoming conversation that we'll have among other issues, and I look forward to your support. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Anjanae Bell. I have lived in Durham for over 4 decades. I am an educator. I taught in Durham Public Schools. I went to Durham Public Schools. I have 3 children who currently attend Durham Public Schools. I have started dance companies and helped others. I'm running because I am deeply concerned about the identity of this city, where we are headed. If we don't take a moment to just pause and take a breath and determine where we want to go as a people, and who gets to belong and who doesn't. I am genuinely concerned about housing, safety, because when I think about my children, and I grew up in this city, you know, them going, I have a 17-year-old, thinking about her going out at night, it concerns me. So I look forward to talking more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We're ready for our first question. You ready, Anjanae? Do you have a job or income stream related to residential or construction development? If so, how will you assure the residents of Durham that you will prioritize their interests over your profit? If not, do you have concerns about other elected officials or candidates benefiting from development?
I don't have a job in housing. That is a concern in terms of how elected officials perhaps may be benefiting behind the table. Was that just the question? Okay, well, there you go.
Parking space requirements were limited by SCAD. In the new UDO, they will be limiting the number of level parking spaces depending on the zoning and the type of building. How is that likely to impact neighborhoods or retail businesses?
Great question. We have 2 minutes, right? Okay. So I think the push to eliminate parking to build density there and make it a much more walkable area, I think is a step in the right direction, right? Like the reality is, as we're bringing more people, either we go higher or we build out. And the comprehensive plan has certain limits on where we can build. And so I do believe in some density, and part of that density means some parking requirements will have to go away. So I think it makes sense. Where I really think the city can play an incredible role in this is the city, particularly the downtown area and other parts, owns a lot of real estate when it comes to parking. And that's something that the city directly controls. And if we can incentivize it much, for example, like the city of Raleigh and the town of Chapel Hill do with their parking infrastructure, to incentivize small businesses, to allow folks to come downtown and patronize businesses. Because if you talk to a lot of people who own businesses, one of the biggest pain points in many parts of Durham is the parking issue. I think that's something that the city can control to better stimulate the downtown business area and other business areas as well that are really suffering right now. If we talk to these owners, some of their sales and their rents are not where they need to be. And so that's one way I think with that step in the right direction, utilizing the real estate that we currently have with regards to parking tax and parking access, and really using that as a lever to accomplish more economic development for our small businesses. Thank you.
Leo, how would you have voted in the Sterling Bay rezoning request? What would you like to see be developed there?
Thank you for that question. As I stated publicly, this was something that I wanted to pursue supporting. But I also know that we can't really build buildings without building trust. So I was gonna go with the extensive community engagement that I personally did, and so, and if it wasn't ready for the people who live in that community, then we were not ready to move forward. But I understand the importance of development. I understand the importance of community benefits agreements, and which is why I appreciate your first question. Just for the record, we can't get, there's no such thing as getting kickbacks from development. Not in this type of government. We are a council manager form of government, so when you see us talk about it, it's when it actually happens. But that's kickbacks, but every single person in the city benefits when the tax rates are expanded, and that is through development. So there's not a sell chicken and lemonade to make more money. It's like an economic jigsaw puzzle. You know, so you are either going to pay more in taxes and restrict housing, or you want to expand the tax base by expanding housing and share that burden, that tax burden. That is not an opinion, that is economic logic. Thank you.
Rafiq, who owns Durham? The residents, the developers, tax? These include how you will support or work to dismantle current influencers.
Simply speaking, to a developer, the developers and parents. When you speak to the issue of improvement, you have to have someone in firm and they'll stand for all of the people, regardless of race, creed, or color. Anytime you have a system where the developers can come in like the SCAD did and control the whole community through backdoor dealings, shenanigans, you're gonna have the same form of government if you vote for some of these same people over and over again. It's like the program that I came out called PROSA. One of the things that I learned at PROSA 20 years ago, 25 years rehab. If you keep accepting and doing the same thing over and over again, the same political, so-called political leaders, it's insanity. You're gonna have the same problem.
Chelsea. While improved streets and new programs sound like a great idea, they can come at a real cost for taxpayers. If elected, what will you consider before you raise taxes?
Thank you. I'm gonna say one thing really quickly, which is that if y'all see me up here, my hands on my face, I have a horrible migraine. Just a reminder that we are all people up here just doing our real lives, and sometimes other things come through. So just let y'all know that I'm not dissociating if you see me with my eyes closed. We have raised taxes in the city 2 years in a row, and those were both decisions that we took really, really seriously. And this year in particular, you saw a tax increase. I want to be really clear about this. We saw a reevaluation. You did not have your taxes increased at the same rate as your tax reevaluation. So it didn't go up at the same rate as your house value went. We started at a net neutral level, and we increased taxes on top of that. And we did so because we had two really big things that we had to cover. The first was that we had to cover our employee wage percentage, one of the biggest things that we spend our budget on, and we have a Durham living minimum wage, and I'm really proud of that in this city, but we're catching up from the COVID years, and so we saw a drastic increase in those wages, so we had a big bump because of that. The other thing was debt servicing, and this goes directly to this question. That debt servicing was to pay for the bonds that we passed as a city, and one of those bonds was sidewalk and street repairs. It is the most efficient way to pay for those large capital improvements, but it does cost taxpayers. I want to be really clear, the county has raised taxes 3 years in a row. I am not interested in the city having to do the same. The only reason that I can think of to raise taxes on the 3rd year in a row would be if we really need to insulate ourselves from something coming down from the federal government, which is a real threat that we have to be thinking about. But outside of really extenuating circumstances, after 2 years of tax raises, I am absolutely uninterested in doing it on the 3rd year in a row.
Grant, have you visited public housing complexes that have been affected by violent crime? What steps, if any, will you take to listen to the people in these neighborhoods and to make these communities safer?
I take the bus through Durham, I walk through Durham, so I am in all parts of Durham, including public housing complexes every day. Steps that I would take to reduce violent crime, crime is caused by desperation, by hunger, by fear, and we need to work on eliminating those things by making it so that someone doesn't feel like they have to go violently rob someone to pay their rent or to get food on the table for their family, or just because they feel like they have no other community that will accept them. We have to invest in a future through post-secondary stuff, whether that be bridge programs or better civic engagement by, talk about infrastructure. A lot of our youth, especially some in public housing complexes, can't even get around. You see some areas of Durham don't have sidewalks even. And so when we talk about accessible extracurricular activity, that's the key to giving our youth a future and a place, and to make them feel like they are part of Durham and not just a rejected afterthought. That's where I would have invested. Of course, there is the we need to end food deserts. Those primo gift clothes, and that's just one more source of community that's gone. We need to obviously invest in housing, invest in safety and security so that people don't take these measures. Thank you very much.
All right, Terry, with the new UDO under development, what role should residents have in the new development approval process? Be specific on when you think public hearings should be held and how resident feedback would play in your process when considering new proposals.
Well, just like we had the passing of the Sterling Bay, where there's not a lot of input from the citizens of the city who want to be living in these communities. The first thing that needs to take place, instead of having developers come in and dictate what they want to build, the citizens need to come together and say, we want in a certain area, we want this store, we want this house, we want this apartment. Then get a developer to build to our needs versus to what they want. Because when the developers come here, a lot of them are out of state. They come here, they rape our city, and they leave with money, but we're here paying the consequences. So I think in any future development, the citizens need to be involved. They must demand what we do. For me, if I'm elected, I'm just a servant. The citizens need to voice what they want their city to look like. Whether it's luxury apartments, if they want that, they need to voice it. But again, we need less luxury apartments. We need places for people to live, small square footage, something that they can afford. But the people need to decide how they want their city to become. And when that happens, people will rise to their occasion, because people in Durham are not stupid. People in Durham have been hoodwinked for decades, not just 2 years, but for decades. And it's time for the city to listen to the people. Do what the people want, not what the developers want, or even what city leaders or so-called leaders want. The people in Durham are in control. Thank you.
Diane, how should the city of Durham help the Durham Housing Authority get its properties up to date?
It's a great question. I think that making sure that the properties are up to date, we need to be thinking, I know they're currently working on making standards for going forward, and trying to figure out how to renovate is really challenging. So sometimes it's not going to be fixing what's already there. It's going to need to creating something new. Because if that is cheaper, we don't want the huge expense to come back to the resident. So in the end, we have to figure out what's gonna be the most cost-effective way to handle the situation. Is it going to be to fix what's there or build something new? I would like to look into this more, and the process that I would go through this would be bringing in all of our local experts, and figuring out the best ways of handling that, and then going from there. But having a very full research and then looking at other cities who have a similar demographic and figuring out how they handle it.
And because of the way that we only have one mic, it's your next question.
Okay.
How will you ensure that all residents, regardless of residency status, feel safe reporting crimes and engaging with city service?
It's a great question. I would say that since filing, I've had more conversations with police officers than I've had in the past. During my police ride-along one evening with Officer Bliss Gregory, she was saying that she is saddened by her feeling, her relationship with people when she goes out into the community. She feels like there are places where she's not wanted, and there are other communities where she feels like they want more of a police presence. I think there's a lot of hurt in Durham and mistrust of police. I think that we have to rebuild, and I think that the CAHT program is an incredible move in that direction. Hearing about how they're helping not just people who are having the mental health crises, but they're also helping police officers learn how to de-escalate in situations. And so that's an incredible second service that they are providing. I think that moving forward with all police and first responders all around, we need to know that the purpose of them being here is to help and make sure that we are having accurate data of when 911 calls are coming in, how fast they're being responded to, and tracking that and having transparency with the community of how that's going.
Okay, thank you, Terry. What should the city do to encourage and facilitate use of bicycles and other non-motorized transport?
Yes, well, one thing I think would be in the way that the city builds. Like if we can build walkable communities by using properties that are already there. Think about where you live, there are like vacant old Dollar Tree stores, vacant AMC theaters. Build within that where you have affordable housing there. Make that community a walkable community where you have a store, anchor store in that community. Could be Whole Foods. A lot of people say we don't have a Whole Foods. We don't want Whole Foods that people will come. And then build around that particular entity. Make it walkable so that people can, those who want to walk. I'm not a walker myself, my wife is. Make it walkable for those who want to walk. Make it rideable for those who like to ride from places. But we can use the current infrastructure and use in building and build within the city. But as we're doing that, we're making it walkable so that as future residents come into their particular residence, the community is already walkable. I visited my daughter this past summer in Chicago, and I was walking around and everything was like walkable. We didn't have to like drive our car to a CVS and some stuff around. We would just walk through it, walk back, and people riding their bikes. We can do the same thing here in Durham. We got to just use common sense strategies.
All of the major roadways to the southeastern part of Durham County are state roads. The traffic out there is already gridlock often, and thousands of units are in the pipeline. What should the city do about this?
Could you repeat the first part of that question? I didn't hear it.
Sure. All of the major roadways in the southeastern part of Durham County are state roads. Traffic out there is already gridlocked, and thousands of units are in the pipeline. What should the city do about this?
What should the city do about the gridlock in parts of Southeast Durham? Well, anything to do with those roadways is a serious fiscal endeavor. So I'm gonna take a couple seconds off to think about this, because this is a very, very tough question. Well, thinking about that, I personally believe that when we talk about stuff like the UDO, and I believe that we need to revise it to be a lot less lenient on traffic impact assessments and what developers are required to do to help us with traffic. That's one way, because a lot of these roads, I mean, currently right now, I believe our traffic impact assessments that are performed by the developers last 8 years. I mean, the citizen base is expanding far too rapidly, and what our developers contribute is not commensurate with the amount of vehicles, with the amount of people that are using these roadways, and that's one of the reasons why we see this massive gridlock. This, a 6-foot turn lane is not going to offset any of that. So a big part of that is going to come down to revising these ordinances and saying, hey, you have to do more comprehensive surveys. You have to use the surveys more often to keep up with growth, and you have to put in place actual mitigating factors so that this traffic is not just molasses in wintertime. Thank you very much.
Chelsea, how will you protect long-term Durham residents from displacement while still promoting affordable housing?
Hey, my question right up my alley. Okay, so I think that affordable housing is really, really complicated, and I have a lot of deep policy ideas on my campaign website, and I'm also going to be introducing some stuff coming up here in the next few months. But the reality of it is that I do eviction work, and so I see people coming to court, their rent doubling over a period of 1 or 2 years, right? And for some people, the best they can do is move to Roxborough or somewhere nearby where the property is lower. And to me, that's valuable Durham citizens that we are losing. And so my plan is multi-factored, but what I want to see is density, but smart density that incorporates affordability and also incorporate environmental protections. We have to be able to withstand these massive changes and impacts that we're seeing coming in. And these things don't work against each other. And I think we hear a narrative all the time that we can only get density if we give up affordability, or we can only give up environmental protection. So the truth of the matter is that we can grow in a smart way in all of these realms, right? And so we have a comprehensive plan that talks about densifying in our areas where things are actually accessible, where people can access transit. We really need to stay true to that, and we really need to hold the very few tools that we have in terms of approving zoning that comes before us in our new UDO rewrite. Because without those tools, if we can hand over growth to developers, they're profit maximizing. We know that that's what they'll do, and they're going to build not necessarily affordable and not necessarily in the places that we want them. We've already seen it in these massive growth spurts down Southeast Durham. People don't have access to resources. They don't have access to transit. They might be small, but they're not actually affordable. So it wasn't even my time to stick with my.
Developers and some advocates for increasing density claim that building more will bring the prices down. Unfortunately, often what that means is meant as a lot of luxury housing that displaces long-term residents because they increase the average value of housing in that area. What will you do to minimize this outcome so more residents can remain in their homes?
That's not only a good question. If the residents in the audience tonight will pick up the Herald Sun's paper today, August the 27th, and read the front page headline, it says, more than 10,000 appeal Durham County property tax bill. Let me repeat that. More than 10,000 appeal Durham County property tax bill. This is the issue we're gonna have to deal with. It also says the Durham County tax rate is 55.42 cents per $100 in property value. And the city of Durham tax rate is 47.71%, $100 in property value. Combined county and city tax rate is 99.13% per $100 in property. As an example here is what would it look like for a homeowner of a home valued at $415,000. They will pay approximately almost $4,200 in taxes. How did it get this way? Leadership, poor leadership that feared to go into the legislative body and bother and deal with these issues. You're gonna get the same thing, it's gonna keep on rising, and the same question will be asked over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah, some of our Durham streets are owned by the state. In downtown, there is Duke, Gregson, and Roxborough, Mena. And Highway 98 out in the country, the most development out there is annexed into the city. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages to the city caused by this conundrum?
Thank you for that question. Durham, the city of Durham has enough street, real estate or right of ways, we call it, to stretch from Durham to Dallas, Texas. However, some of the main streets that we travel a lot in our city are state-owned streets. I call them state-owned interstates inside the city. We have 4 streets, Roxborough, Bingham, Duke, and Gregson. They are the most dangerous in our entire corridor. And we have studied it. We have put money up. We have met with the Department of Transportation's board. It is a nightmare getting them to move on this. And I continue and will continue to call them out publicly about it. DOT, do your job. We need to get these streets reassessed so that we can, and I know folks are saying, make it two-way, but we're talking about that without a price tag. It doesn't necessarily have to be two-way. It could be, put parking on both sides and protected bike lanes. But when we do two-way, we also have to consider the loop that we are ultimately, and the folks who designed the loop actually now tell you they're much older and retired. That was a mistake. It was bad engineering. So we do have to address that. The city has done its part. We are waiting and trying to force as best we can to get DOT to address their streets or roads in our city. And I know we're talking about taxation a lot, and we're talking about, just development a lot. I want to be very clear. If you own property and you want to do something with that property, you are officially a developer. And I see some of you all in the audience, and there are some folks that have experienced that in elected office. If you want to sell, well, I'll get into that a little later.
Transit opportunity zones are referenced in the new guidelines. What does that mean, and what level of commitment will you take to enable the necessary changes?
Yeah, so as we're currently in the new UDO rewrite, I'm learning a lot. Just like many of the folks here in the city of Durham as the engagement process begins. And I've learned some components of the new UDO, and I'd like to talk to them in a second. But specifically to your point around transportation, that's one area I don't know a lot about. So I'd like to do more research, and I want to be very transparent with the audience. Like, we're candidates on stage, and sometimes we don't know the questions that are being asked, and that's one of them. But I do want to talk about the new UDO rewrite, because one of the things I think is really important that's on the ballot, going back to the very first question that was asked of me, why are you running? Well, there are some differences between myself and the incumbent mayor when it comes to the proposed new UDO rewrite. One of the things that many people in the city of Durham do not know is a lot of parcels of land here in the city of Durham are going to be upzoned automatically with the new UDO rewrite So a lot of the oversight and regulatory mechanisms that the city council has will disappear before our eyes. To give you two very clear examples, there is a scenario where Sterling Bay may not even need to go back to city council to ask for a rezoning request, because by right, the new UDO rewrite has increased the maximums in that parcel of land. And that's a lot of things a lot of people don't even know about. Yesterday evening, I was at the Lakewood Community Small Area Planning, and I learned a lot about the new codes with the new UDO rewrite. And by right, for example, the Lakewood Shopping Center is going to dramatically increase in story heights, and along a lot of the small business storefronts along along Chapel Hill Road will increase. And so the city council through the new UDO rewrite is going to lose a lot of its power to compel developers to work with community and provide a lot of community benefits through this whole new process. That really concerns me. And that's the difference between myself and the incumbent mayor. And so part of the reason that I'm running is because I want to give the voters of the city of Durham some real meaningful choices. And this is on one issue, but I truly believe there's a difference between myself and the incumbent mayor. And if you like what you're getting, vote for him.
Thank you. And Janae, will you support a $20 minimum wage for all Durham city workers and contractors? How should the city pay for it?
Yes, I would support $20 minimum wage. We'll get to the second part in terms of how we should pay for it. Affordable housing will never be affordable with the numbers that exist to purchase. When our income is combined with Chapel Hill, you make 100,000, I make 45,000, we combine it, there's that percentage that comes, it will never be affordable for me. And the only way that we start thinking about people who live in Durham is how much they make to be able to actually afford to live here. Downtown with my children, same thing. What it takes to go out to have dinner, to be entertained. It's very expensive, the rates of food, all of that. How do we pay for it? I would consider in terms of looking and making and creating an audit to be able to figure those things out. In terms of what's in the budget. I'm an incumbent, excuse me, I'm not. I'm a candidate. So, yes, in terms of being on the outside, but I definitely think that we have to make that a priority in the city to be able to support those who work in the city, to be able to remain in the city and to be able to do whatever their pockets dictate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you also get the next question. Durham's water contains significant amounts of PFOS, PFOA, and its forever chemical cousins. What do you think should be done differently, if anything?
So great, because someone asked me a water question before. What I understood is that our water in Durham is good. We have good quality water, except in terms of PFAS. I'm assuming that is what you were asking. Currently, it's the issue of technology to be able to support that. I will tell you, I'm not well versed. That is something that I'm currently exploring, but I understand that it is about us being able to have the technology. And that is something that the city would have to invest in. And that's my response.
Thank you. Alvin, another UDO question for you. In considering new development, how should the city weigh such factors as creation of permeable surfaces, removal of tree canopy, and creation of additional stormwater runoff?
Great question. I think we must consider it. I mean, this is 2025. We haven't seen how the climate is engaging around us, and you must be living under a rock. But as part of the process for rezoning or comprehensive plan or the new UDO rewrite, we must be taking these issues into account. In fact, one of my key standards on development that I have laid out publicly is when it comes to development, we've got to consider community voice. We've also got to consider our impacts to our local public school system. And the third one is sustainability. It is critically important. I mean, we just saw record rainfall last month, and a portion of the city of Durham was flooded. And those are the standards that we on the city council are putting forward for what development should look like. And it's through approving rezoning requests, it's through the UDOs that we write or then change as part of this process. I think it's critically important that those standards, whether it's water runoff or green spaces, impervious surfaces, all be taken into account as part of that planning process. And I'm publicly committing tonight that that's going to be part of my decision-making matrix when I look at a rezoning request. But one of the things I haven't talked about, you know, I'm an administrator just like Mr. McCann works in the school system as a high school math teacher. One of the things that baffles me when it comes to Durham, despite our progressive values, is we will weigh development decisions in Durham with zero impact to our local public school system. Right now, you could build a whole subdivision in East Durham, and you don't even have to measure whether or not how 100 additional kids may impact your local elementary school. And I don't mean that as an argument for or against development. What I mean is if you're going to put that subdivision, well, maybe the developer needs to set aside some land for a local public school, or make a significant contribution to the school system to accommodate that increased enrollment growth of 100 students. That is the type of values, that is the type of decision-making matrix that I as a candidate would bring to the table. That is where I have a difference between myself and the incumbent mayor. And hopefully with your support, I will lead forward with that vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Leah, water keepers and water quality watchdogs have long documented extreme cases of sediment pollution from large-scale developments, which are causing creeks in southeast Durham to run bright orange with dirty construction runoff. What do you think should be done to address this issue?
Thank you for that question. So you're talking about turbidity or tomato soup, as it's definitely known. Whenever you have a disturbance, you're gonna have that in our creeks. And you know, sometimes it's from development, sometimes it's from other disturbances. We do monitor that and other nutrients in the actual water. And one thing we have to do is make sure that we're making decisions based on science, not just opinion. That has been a significant concern of the residents in Southeast Durham. That is why we have constantly placed our attention over there. And if it's to a point where it's to a point where it's at beyond alarming, then therefore we respond to it. But the trusted staff have utilized science to measure this over and over and over, and they constantly compare that with the lived experiences of the residents there. No one has the power to go and be opinionated or make city or government decisions based on this opinion. So that's actually happening. We're monitoring that. You'll also keep hearing the difference between Mr. Freeman and the comment as it says, there is a difference. And that means one of us knows what we're talking about. What I mean by that is, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, I mean it honestly. When it comes to tree canopy, we're already doing that. When it comes to water erosion, tree preservation, that policy is already there. So, you know, when it comes to the taxes that was talked about, we have not raised taxes in 6 years in the city. So when the assessment happened, it's going to be extremely high. So I want to make sure that if we're going to do this job, I mean, this is respectful, we have to know what we're talking about. We have to do our homework because we're talking about what's lives here. So I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, I mean in a very transparent, direct, honest way. Thank you.
Rafiq, in the current and new UDO, builders are permitted to plant fewer trees in exchange for building more affordable housing. Much of this development is going on in and around historic income communities. Heat islands are most common in those areas. Is this not further environmental racism?
It's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. It's just like the lead in the ponds that Duke and WRAL discovered. But Sherry Rosenthal, raise your hand. Rosenthal. We were the only one that went before Parks and Recreation Committee to expose the in-depth concentration of lead in the ponds. We're gonna get back to the trees. We were the only one that kept the ball rolling because city council dropped the ball. 5 pots with our children in it, being exposed. And I can speak from experience. I have a 3-year-old grandson in Washington Park, Google it up, Portsmouth, Virginia, that I went to the federal court and had a whole community removed from a land-based area. That's Rafiq Zaidi versus EPA in Washington Park, Portsmouth, Virginia. We have the same engineers to analyze lead in Durham, the same ones that we had in Portsmouth in 1984. And that lead is still there because of the carcinogenic. It travels. The lead is still there in those ponds. They're talking about new ponds, like new trees. Like new trees. And somebody got exposed to this. The lead is still there, and somebody got exposed to the point that you understand the condition that our children are living in. These people don't know anything about lead. They have this experience. They a whole lot of smoke screaming and rhetorical statements that they get from the engineers, and they pass it on to us. And right now, the evaluation of the land analysis is a bunch of hoodwink and bojangling that they try to run on the community, and we falling for it. We falling for it.
Chelsea. Is the city doing a good job of policing developers' on-site construction practices to ensure they are following best practices and city standards? Why or why not?
It's a great question, and one that I have asked several times at our city council meetings. So for those of you who have watched, a lot of times what we see is we see developers come offer extra things during development hearings, rezoning hearings. And these things can range anything from a bus shelter if they get permission from the city or the state or whoever owns the road, to a one-time donation to the Durham Public Schools, to affordability for 30 years at 60% AMI or lower. Well, this one-time donations, that one feels pretty straightforward and easy to measure, and I know that we're following up on that. We do have a methodology for following up on some of these longer term commitments. So we use our neighborhood improvement services and code enforcement to do that. But we saw during COVID that a lot of those inspections that were happening in other capacities were pretty limited. And sometimes cases were closed or they were held open for many more years than they should have been. So I've asked numerous times, how do we know that this 5% staying affordable in 30 years? And I haven't really gotten a super clear answer on that. And it is something that I'm looking at all the time. And I want to reiterate what some of my colleagues have said up here, which is that those proffers are only coming because the developers have to come before us at this moment in time to get zoning changes. And if we allow them to be upzoned and have those zoning changes automatically, build whatever they want, they are not going to come before us, the city council anymore. These are not very big donations that we're talking about, but even the small things that we have, these little tiny levers that we have, we're going to use even those. And state regulations now have shown, because the state legislature just passed a rule that once we upzone, we can never go back. So if we lose those tools, we lose them forever.
Grant, blasting is often necessary to get proper footings for new construction. Some have complained about the impact to their property nearby, including wells caving in. What would you do, what would you have the city do to correct the situation?
The city, when it comes to when we talk about blasting done by development to correct damage done to infrastructure, whether it be wells or any sort of property, I would have the city. Once more, I'm gonna have to take a couple seconds to think about this. Very complex topic. As far as redressing the damage that has been done, I would look into perhaps starting some sort of fund to redress that in the long term. But what we can do is prevent that from happening any further by restricting how the blasting is done and requiring more comprehensive surveys, because it's absurd that that is allowed to happen. Someone's allowed to use explosives to develop, and of course, that's going to have impacts on anything subterranean in the vicinity. And so if a developer is going and blasting, they should be held accountable by, if they're going to blast, being forced to put up some sort of escrow that will remain in place until a comprehensive survey of the surrounding area is done and residents are contacted, because these are serious consequences and we need to fix this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Terry, do you think enough is being done to prevent new development from affecting the quality of Durham's streams, rivers, and lakes? Why or why not? What should Durham do differently?
To answer your first question, I would say no, not enough is being done. Quality in Durham. And going back to the previous question, with the blasting is affecting people's, they have cracks in their homes, they have cracks in their wells have collapsed. So again, no, that's easy correct. What was the second part of your question?
What do you think should be done differently?
Well, what needs to be done differently is that when contractors come in, when developers come in, there needs to be accountability so that when things like this happen, they must be held accountable. It shouldn't be someone living in their home in, let's say, Southeast Durham, and something happens where they have to wait for someone to help them out because it wasn't their fault. They are a victim of something that happened not of their own control. So when these incidents happen, the developers who did the blasting, which is taking place, they must be held accountable to make these people whole. Our citizens in Durham should not have to call and make complaints to whoever, waiting for their homes to be fixed, waiting for their wells to be restored, because it was not their fault. They were the victim of the developer, and again, they should be made whole because again, they were the victim. It's not the other way around. Thank you.
Thanks. Diane, Durham's average daily water usage for several years been slightly more than its average daily supply by historic water sources, like and Little River Reservoir. To make up for this and deal with City Council majority's desire to increase the western intake on Jordan Lake is intended to be built, and the city received an expanded allocation for Jordan Lake water. Jordan Lake is significantly more polluted water source than Lake Mitchie or Little River. What are your thoughts on the future of Durham's water supply?
Well, that sounds bleak. So didn't know that. Thank you for sharing. I would say that we have, when I'm exploring this question about learning about the different things in our water and how to keep it safe, I was speaking with some people that were talking about there are amazing filtration systems that we should be installing in every home, and that we need to be educating people on the importance of installing these water filtration systems. I think that we need to be testing the water regularly and keeping track of the data, and when things are looking worse, when things are looking better, is it around development happening? Is it around weather events? Is it, and figuring out the big things that we need to do going forward is we just need to keep figuring out how to prototype different solutions, keep coming back at these situations and figuring out how to make it better. Look at other cities who have similar situations. How are they fixing their water problems? There's New York has a lot more people in New York City has a lot more density and a lot more development going on, and they're known for having some pretty wonderful water. So I think that if cities like that can do it, we can do it too.
Thanks. Second question for you now. Does Durham have enough police officers on duty today? Where is the police department succeeding? Where is it falling short?
We do not. We have 150 vacancies. I was speaking with a previous police chief recently, and he was saying that we are still getting trying to rebuild after there was a large group of people that left the police force during the defund the police situation, and because they were not feeling like this was a respected profession here, and how challenging that is. We need for everyone in Durham, everyone who works here, to feel like their job has duty, no matter what their job is, but especially someone who's expected to protect. And you know, we need to make sure that those positions that we are there being paid competitively. And hearing that there's apparently every month, there's 4 police officers that leave because it's natural attrition. And that it takes 9 months to train a police officer. So it's just going to take a while even to rebuild the police force. But that going forward, we can be just very intentional about making sure they are getting the best training possible. I heard that the person who's in charge of training right now is awesome. And making sure that they're working with heart and learning how to do all this de-escalating as well. And, you know, just going forward, making sure that we are building those relationships in communities and making sure this is a situation where people feel like there's opportunity. I was very impressed that they had, during my ride along for Spanish speaking, there were translation opportunity. It would be awesome if we continue to have more opportunity for police officers to have continuing education.
Thank you. Terry, what community-led safety programs would you support as alternative to police response for young people? How would you pay for it?
The community response for young people. Well, I think one like having school resource officers in schools is like a first step in all our schools, because again, a lot of our kids are stigmatized and feel unsafe with these officers for certain reasons. So we need to get our children to interact with these officers, to know that they are here to serve us, they're here to protect, they're here to make Durham a better place. Now, as far as how they can be funded, we don't need to raise any taxes for it. We need to raise any taxes for these programs. These are current things that can be talked about in our school systems amongst our teachers. These are things that parents can do with their children. They're out shopping when they're out doing to and fro, but it does not require any additional taxes to do something that can be done in a common sense way. That can be done in a way that is non-threatening. That's something that kids of all ages can comprehend and understand. Whether they're elementary age kids or high school age kids, you know, kids have a level of understanding. But when they are spoken to in a certain way that it's on the enemy, they're going to feel that anything the police does, men and women in blue, they're going to feel like they should not trust. So we got to have a different dialogue. The whole city needs to appreciate our citizens, our police officers. There needs to be a statement from the Durham City Council that our men and women in blue are here to protect our men and women in blue are not the enemy. They risk their lives every day to protect me and everybody here in this audience and those people who are online. You know, they should be paid fairly, but also too, when they do something wrong, they should be held accountable. We got to change the mindset of what police safety is. The #1 job of government should be public safety. Without public safety, everything else that we've talked about this evening will not take place. Thank you.
Thank you. Grant, when approving new development proposals, should Durham City and County leaders consider current ambulance availability and response times, as well as how often hospitals have to divert patients? What should city officials do to ensure that EMS and hospitals are keeping up with population growth?
To answer the first part of the question, I think when we talk about density, and especially developing parcels of land that haven't been developed, that are next to others that have been developed, there is a sort of a really big mismatch where even though you develop these two very dense parcels right next to each other, they're not always interconnected, and there isn't that easy availability for EMTs or emergency transport, whether it be ambulances or fire trucks or whatever. So I think we need to seriously, as when we did approve parcels of land as a part of, we say, how are you going to connect this with the one to the left, to the right, above, etc., because this is a big problem. And what was the second part of the question?
That part was, what should city officials do to ensure that EMS and hospitals are keeping up with population growth?
What should city officials do to ensure that EMS and hospitals are keeping up with population growth? I think one of our biggest hospitals is Duke, and I know that a lot more EMS and a lot more hospital staff would be provided to work there if there was a fair minimum wage and if they treated their employees fairly. So that is something that we need to be doing. We need to be pressuring Duke for fair treatment, because it's what's going to attract the staff. That's what's going to attract these talented and trained people, is respect and dignity and being paid fairly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chelsea, if elected, what actions would you support to ensure Durham is prepared for mass casualty emergencies, from historic floods to a shooting rampage at CAHT?
So I already sit on the city council, so I get the opportunity to say things that I have done. Okay, got a lot of signals here. So we have been moving forward on developing a disaster plan. So you watched a work session, actually just our most recent work session. I pulled this item from the agenda to talk about this in public, because I know that it's something that's on a lot of people's minds. We are seeing an increase in climate related disasters, and there's no question that these things, 100-year storms, are now every year storms. If we are so unlucky as to see that. And so we need a plan in place. And so we are actually working really closely with the county to ensure that we do have exit strategies and clear communication. And part of this is knowing that some parts of the population aren't going to get messages on their smartphones because they're going to be at home on their landlines. We have folks who are just in different situations. We have elders. We have all sorts of people who need to be able to escape from their homes, get to the correct spots. It's a little bit complicated, right? Because depending on the type of disaster, the safe space might be different. So it's not like you can have one plan that's ubiquitous across the city. So what we're doing is trying to develop few enough but diverse enough plans that we can have folks coming to safe places and knowing how and where to get there and how to make a plan to get there. So the city has put money into this development already, and we are continuing to work on that. A city official at every single one of those meetings, so it is a county-driven disaster preparedness program. So I'm excited to keep supporting that and to talk with residents about that plan once it comes out, which should be early next year.
Thank you. Mafi, how will you protect Durham's immigrant communities and ensure city resources aren't used for immigration enforcement?
One issue that I keep on raising, especially in the Latino community, my brothers and sisters, if you can't find a way to counterattack President Trump coming to Durham, at one time this was a safe sanctuary, then it was a resolution. Now the actual people don't know what it is. Undocumented. Trump can come here tonight, and if you're not willing to stand up against that administration, the people gonna find out that they done voted for a lie. You got to have enough testable fortitude to stand up against the Trump administration, and you got to let the people know before they go to the polls, what are you gonna do? I was down at the jail when one of the agents came in. And there's some people out in the audience that bear me witness. I was one of the first one down at the sheriff's office to check on and see what was he doing, what was he up to. I was the first one that reported a bus with ISIS on it that was hidden out there behind Food Line on Capitol Boulevard. The next day they removed the bus. We got to learn how, regardless of race, creed, or color, to protect our community from any tyranny that is about to come in here. I'm gonna stand with the Latino community, regardless of our home council or not. The same way I did when Jose Lopez was here, and we ran him out of town because of the way he was treating that segment of the community. People don't like to hear the truth. That's their tough love. I'm here to tell you the truth at all given time. I'm gonna stand with that community. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line.
Thank you. Leah. In 2024, Durham County, without explanation, shut down the Bull City United program, which the city had heavily invested in. What did you like and not like about the program? Do you think the city should have invested in it, and should it be resurrected?
Thank you. First, I want to say I do not agree with everybody on the council that I lead, but I take pride in the work that has been done, and I get really passionate about it. And some of the questions that are asked assume that something hasn't been done when it has, and that can get really frustrating. So I want to make sure I just say I don't mean any of my comments to be derogatory. Sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about, and I'll own that. So to Mr. Freeman earlier, I appreciate your passion, but I don't mean that you just don't know. I appreciate when you actually want to dig into this more. To your point, I think that it's called a pure balance model, and the pure balance model is necessary, holistic approach to reducing crime, especially amongst our young people. I do support the program, but I also understand that we have challenges with the program. The city should invest, and the city should invest more than just the pure balance model. There's a whole lot more we need to do. That's why I started the Whole City Future Fund. Personally raising $1 million to invest in nonprofits. We gave out $300,000 recently, and we're going to do it 2 more times. And that's just an example of how we can actually invest in our young people. So it's more than just Bull City United, it's actually a lot more. It's investing in nonprofits that are doing, it's investing in proactive relationship building. And there's a lot more that we can do. But yeah, I appreciate that question. And I appreciate how targeted the question is. The previous questions asked about, the city and hospitals and EMS, and that's not in our jurisdiction. So thank you.
Thank you. Public safety is now about half of the city's budget. Are we getting our money's worth? What would you change or keep the same as a public safety?
As a candidate, when you're up here, you're on pins and needles because you don't know what question you're going to ask. It feels a little like lottery, just picking up the question. That's an excellent question. So on the public safety front, I have some thoughts on that, and I really want to focus on the prevention side. So number one is we pay premium taxes in Durham. We get less than premium services at the very initial point when it comes to public safety with regards to emergency communications. Folks will call 911 and the calls won't get picked up or will get dropped. And it's fundamentally unacceptable. Folks from day one are trying to engage with law enforcement, and that whole process isn't working. There needs to be proper oversight and accountability. So what would I change? We're going to dig deeply into that and make sure that our public emergency communication system is working and it's appropriately staffed. Calls are being picked up and resources are being deployed when that when that need happens. That's number one. Number two, on the law enforcement side, one of the things that I would do, and I pledge tonight, I've said this publicly, is I think all of our city employees, including our law enforcement officers, need to be paid for the type of work that they're doing. They're significantly underpaid compared to their peers in other municipalities. Similarly, I also have concerns around victims of crime and how they're being supported by law enforcement, right? So, for example, somebody very near to my heart had their car nearly stolen, right? They called 911. The law enforcement officer never came out to take the report. They took the report over the phone. We're paying premium taxes, and that's the premium experience, or less than premium experience that we're getting. We've got to do better. I think in how we're deploying our funds with public safety, we've got to look at it line item by line item, right? Just mentioned salaries, I'm on board with. Shot spot, terrible use of funds, I'm not gonna support that. You know, are we buying new cars every year, every 2 years, or could we extend a little bit longer to redeploy monies into salaries? I wanna look at it line by line on how we're doing, make sure we're making the investments in the right places. Great question, thank you.
Thank you. Every night, children across Durham try to sleep in neighborhoods that are marred with gunshots and shooting. If a mother in that area asked you how you plan to make the city safer for her children in the next 4 years, what would you tell her?
As a mother, that's tough. The first thing is I will receive that mother, because that's tough. I think that it's also very necessary to bring our community together at the table and start talking about those neighborhoods that they experience that on a regular basis. We have to start deepening the conversations and being accountable for the things that are happening in our city. As a mother, that is something that concerns me every single day, that my children are out. And it's not even just in our homes, but even just going to school. Because when I was in high school, went to Jordan, I had classmates that went out. And we made the headlines in not a good way, because one of those classmates was a young boy who got shot in the back, not doing what he was supposed to do in terms of why he was there, but the action that was taken. And that is a very sad thing that happens in our community. And as a mother, that's something that concerns me every day. So bring people to the table, bring one, that mother has to heal, but those necessary conversations that must be had. Because that's something that is plaguing us. It feels like every single night every day there's something that happens in this community related to gun violence. I want to also go back to the Jordan Lake. I work for state parks, and I never let my children get into that water, because every year, I remember in high school, I lost a friend in those waters. And that's not good water to consider that might be our only resource. I lived in Spain, and conservation was an issue. That's something I teach my children. Short showers. Don't waste money. It flows down the drain.
All right, that marks our 4 rounds of general questions for the city council. And now we're going to turn to leadership questions for the mayor candidates. And it's for you. In recent years, conflicts among city council members have led to high-profile shouting matches, accusations of physical altercations, and unsubstantiated allegations of embezzlement. As mayor, do you think you could better manage these conflicts? If so, how?
So that's one of the things that, in my observation of council, is the dysfunction. I grew up watching council. In my home, my father watched those meetings. He watched how they worked. And I grew up understanding that we can agree to disagree. I think that when you hold this office, it's very important to make sure that you have thick skin, that you have the ability to listen, that you have the ability to deal with differences before you go in front and face the people. Yes, we are human. But I think that it is very important that you do the work to make sure that you check yourself and the things that may be triggering to you and figure out how to deal with that respectfully. It is a concern that I've seen in just my observations of council, because I grew up looking and viewing council very differently. I saw some very strong personalities growing up, watching my father lead in that way, and it just never ended up in shouting matches and the things that you have said. That is very unfortunate, and that should not be the way that this council should function. And so, yeah, I think thickening our skin is really important.
Thank you. Pablo, if elected, what would be your 3 top priorities as mayor?
My 3 top priorities would be development, taxes, and housing. There's some other ones. You can check out my website, www.pablofriedman.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, pablo.friedman. And for the folks that have given us a lot of feedback, we're going to open up our Facebook soon, so just bear with us as we build that out. On the development side, this is, I think, the question that I put for the audience, the voters of Durham tonight. If you believe we are on the right path of development, you have a choice, incumbent mayor. If you believe a brighter future is possible, that honors community, is sustainable, measures our impact to our local public schools, I hope turn your vote. On taxes, if you believe that the power and the authority that is vested in the office of the mayor can call on those with the most to pay the most, I hope turn your vote. If you believe we're not doing that, or perhaps those with the most should pay the least, you have an option, incumbent mayor. If you believe on housing, we are doing every single thing that we can, whether those with the lowest incomes in this community, even those that are middle class and working class, you have an option. If you believe that we should hold our Durham Housing Authority to stronger oversight, making sure that basic issues, the issues that we're seeing right now with our housing facilities are properly addressed, I hope to be your candidate. If you believe that some of the authorities that the city has with regards to zero interest loans in return for affordability commitments, we can lower those AMI numbers, right? Or you believe that we can use city-owned land to meaningfully develop housing for those that have nothing in a way that makes sense, I hope to be your candidate. There are options on the ballot. Democracy is like one of the most humbling experiences that we go through as a community. And I hope with this election, we can set a brighter future for what is possible when it comes to Durham. Thank you very much.
How can we improve participatory budgeting to ensure more equitable distribution of funded projects outside of 27701?
Great question. I saw that heat map analysis, a little bald. I think that participatory budgeting needs to be in our schools. It needs to be in the jail, which we are doing. It needs to be in every public entity, every public capacity that we have in our entire county, in our entire city. So I think that is one of the most democratic things we can do to determine how we spend money. That simple as that, it needs to be everywhere. You know, you should be able to fill out a ballot when you go to the grocery store. And since I have a little time left, I appreciate your first question. In my leadership as mayor, we have not had any issues with this function. It's a very functioning council, and I take pride in whether we agree or not with council members. I appreciate the collegiality that we actually have. And I would say just really look at the facts. Durham is one of the fastest growing cities in the country. I talked about development earlier. I know there's just this thing about those evil developers that are coming in. I know developers are right here locally. If you own property and you're trying to do something with it, you are a developer. You want to sell your property, you are calling a realtor. That's just the fact, and there's a lot of comparison going on here. I want to get to the substance of it, just the facts. Some of the things I've heard up here, it will price over half the people out of the city. It really would. So I just want to make sure that we keep our taxes down. We do that by spreading the burden. We spread the burden by making sure that folks are coming here anyway, make sure that they can share some of this burden and not just price everybody out I just wanna make sure we're saving the kids' lives, and make sure that people have a decent quality of life in the city. We are out of 25,000 cities and towns, we're the number 15 best run city in America. Somebody needs to have some positive to say about this. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the mayor is in many ways just another council. But I suspect you have policies, projects, or initiatives that you would support more than others. Could you discuss how you would demonstrate leadership in that regard?
I thank the mayor for opening the door, because he just made a statement of working with the county. There are some initiatives that I would do to work with the county. And one of them is that we have 178 children in foster care in Durham County. 81.2% are Black. 13.6% are white. 4 others. A certain percent of these children in foster care end up on the street. Some of those children are classified and labeled as NYs, because the foster care system refused to keep up with them after they have placed them in foster care custody. 63% of 60, they have 63 homes that are licensed foster homes. 17 unlicensed. I will make sure that my mayoral ability and responsibility crosses over to Durham Social Service and make sure that those children that are in foster care are deserving of the things that they need to develop. You cannot develop our kids by placing them in hands of people who are actually kidnapping our kids under the CPS, Child Protective Service. I will make sure, for my part, in my purview, that if I have to step down, that the county started looking after our children, pulling them off the street, and making sure that the 178 children that are in custody now be served properly.
Thank you all very much. Mimi, I think probably has something she wants to share.
Good job, everybody. Please recognize the real commitment that the candidates have made tonight to come out and take tough questions. So you did a very good job. Let's hear it from the candidates. So I also want to thank Bob and Virginia for their moderation and for I'd like to thank all of those who came out tonight to be here with us, as well as all of those on Zoom who have been attentive also. I want to pay special recognition to Ideal Ortiz, who has Let me just say that we wouldn't be here without her, and she's been absolutely wonderful. As I said earlier, access to the recordings of these will be on the INC website. That's durham-inc.org. If you gave us your email address, we will email you when everything's posted. And don't forget to vote. Registration deadline is September 12th at 5 p.m. Primary early voting starts September 18th to October 4th. The primary election day is October the 7th. Early voting for the general is October the 16th, so it's not far after the primary. So early voting for the November election is October 16th to November 1st. And the general election day is November 4th. So please come out and vote. We wish all the candidates good luck and good night and be well. Thank you.